All righty, let's get started here. If you went through the modules and looked at things, you've got through today you had through today to get 4, was that right? No, 3, 4. I went ahead and opened up number 5 this morning or last night. I forget one of them too, but it's open through next Sunday night. Okay, because remember, we always do the review questions like a week ahead. So next week, if you look at it, it had us to finish chapter 1 and then do our exam over the whole unit. Okay, so what I'm doing is, even though we missed last week in class, what I'm going to do today is we're going to hit the high points and finish this chapter and get done with it. And that way, next week when we get in here, what we'll do is we'll go to the lab and we'll test. Okay, we'll have our first chapter exam out of the way and we'll be up and running a little bit smoother now. It's just introductory stuff in chapter 1, so it's not like earth shattering or mind boggling by any means. Let's just get it done. Okay, so that's my plan on it today, is just kind of hit high points, topics. If you understand it, we'll go on to the next one, right? If it's something that we need to explain a little bit more, let me know and we'll go into more depth on it. Okay. So we pretty much left off on on page 11, I think. And I do that in real life too. I just skipped it because it's about gaming and I'm not a gamer. So that's Cliff. You're fine. You'll live without it. Right. On page 12, it talks about data and information. What's the different definition of data? Okay, data could be considered input, right? Raw information, raw facts, unprocessed information. It's anything that I can throw into the computer, right? Okay. When we talk about after it's processed or stored, it's in a more useful information, right? We normally associate that either with calculations or processing or output, but main thing is you can go through and get an understanding. If we're talking about getting data into the machine, we talked about it last week or 2 weeks ago, our 5 basic components, right? What was the first one we talked about? Getting information into the machine. Input devices. So here it goes through and talks about input devices. We have keyboards. We have any kind of a pointing device, nothing major there, right? We referred to that last time. We had voice input, video input, digital cameras, sensors, and it can go on and on and on, right? Then we go to output, which was the results of processing that data, correct? So an output device just shows us the results or does something, correct? When we look at output, 2 big ones right off the bat are what? Output monitors and, pardon? Audio is a type of output with your sound system, but printers are your big ones. You know, most people, I mean, nowadays, how many people even own one? You need to have one, right? But they go through and talk about all the different types of printers and 3D printers. Anybody got a 3D printer? You got one? You wish? What about you, Cliff? If anybody goes and buys one, bring it up. We won't play with it. All right. They're pretty cool. Some are, some aren't. You know, they're actually just like everything else. They're dropping in price, and they're not as high end as you think they are. Yeah. It's, you know, what was 3,000 is under 300 now. You know, it's just. We've got one across the street. They have one in the IT department they play with all the time. I don't know what they do with it, but I want like a life-size 3D printer. Yeah. I'm gonna start building stuff, right? All right. We have different size displays and everything. Most common display type on a computer nowadays. Some type of an LED, right? Would be probably your best bet. Phones, when you really get into it, and we're going to have a chapter where we really dig into output devices. So I'm mainly just hitting the high points here. I can tell you for a fact, when it comes down to screen resolution, the more quality type of screen you have, the better off you are. Because think about, they talk about the blue lens glasses and all that stuff. I'm living proof of what working on a computer for 30 plus years is. My vision each year gets a little bit worse. Now, it was really bad at the first when we just had monochrome monitors, green and white, green and black, amber and black, just different variations of grayscale monitors. Once we went to color monitors, it really slowed down the regression on it, but it's still out there. Okay, so money's well spent. Headphones and earbuds, everybody's got those right now, right? Side note, does anybody have AirPod Pros? Has yours started acting up yet?
I watched a review on them and they were like dead on arrival.
Yeah, really. Now, mine started acting up because on the newer AirPods, the Pros, they have the noise cancellation mode, they have the regular mode, and then they have transparency mode, which means there's multiple microphones on that deal. And if one gets plugged up or doesn't work quite right, it throws off the noise cancellation or the other. I've got one that's messing up and I can't get it. Yeah, I'm not spending $500 on Bose. Yeah.
When you put them in and it says that they're in the charging docks, disconnect and somewhere else, like forget device or go through the pairing process.
I've done everything. I've even gone in and tried to clean out the microphones, the bottom one and the side one. I'm still working on one, but if you find the trick to it, let me know. All right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking about buying the knockoffs and just in the heck with it. All right, memory and storage on a computer. Again, the other day we talked about memory, RAM and ROM, two different types. One's temporary, one's more permanent, correct? But when we get to storage, what's the difference between memory and storage?
Memory is typically temporarily stored, where storage is more of a permanent solution.
Okay, memory is in your RAM. When it's in a useful form, it's in a volatile state. I guess that would probably be the easiest way to say that. If the power went off, what happens to it? You lose it. Storage devices are a more permanent way of storing our information that don't necessarily have to have power running to them all the time, with the exception, well, no, not even on that one. Solid state's the only one that's kind of iffy, but it's more like ROM, but it's an electronic ROM. Okay, so if you lose the power to it, it still retains its value. It's more like ROM than RAM on your solid state devices. Okay, but if we really look at it, and I know on those quizzes, I went back and graded week 2 and week 3. So the updated scores should be in for those. If you notice, there's probably a grade change for some of you. I'm waiting. 4 didn't close till today, so I haven't graded it yet. But then probably next week sometime I'll do 4, 5, and the test. Okay. But one of the questions on those review questions are, what are the 3 types of storage devices, right? So what did you have? Solid state, optical, and magnetic, which magnetic is internal storage for the most part. Optical, solid state were your 3. Okay. Those were the 3 different types we're looking at. Because if I said magnetic, it could be anything from a little bitty floppy diskette that we used years ago to an internal hard drive, or even on mainframes, the big mainframe magnetic disks. But if we're talking solid state, it could be a solid state hard drive. It could be a little thumb drive, right? USB flash drive. That is what? Solid state. Okay. Optical is what? DVD, CD. There's one more. Holographic.
What are those things that PSPs used to use?
Those are all still those are still optical discs. I don't know. Different sizes, variations on, you're talking Blu-ray actually was one of the first ones. Blu-ray's actual a type of holographic. Did you know that? They use multiple laser angles on one surface to go to different depths. So yeah, it's pretty cool. All right. So we have all those. Again, like I said, we're gonna have chapters that break these down in detail later on. We're just hitting the high points, right? You don't really see a whole lot of memory cards nowadays on computers. Where you see the memory cards are where? Phones, digital cameras, things like that, right? Cloud storage. What's cloud storage? Stored in the cloud. There's this one rain cloud right above me, right? It's nothing more than a network drive. I don't know why people said cloud and coined that term. When you think of remote data storage, it's in the cloud. Well, it's just out of mind, out of sight. If you're storing in the cloud, it's still one of what? 3 types of storage devices. What are they? Either magnetic, optical, or solid state. It's just not, you just don't physically have the device. Okay, good and bad with that. It's nice in case your device gets compromised or stolen, you can get your information back, right? But here's the bottom line, and I think of this all the time because every day in the news, you hear of what? A security breach, someone's data was hacked or whatever. 99.9% of those are what? Cloud-based storage hacks. It might be an internal compromise, but the data is still accessed externally. So take it for what it is. Anytime, and you've worked with network security. Cliff, you're in that class right now. Is there anything definitely a 100% secure device online? You got to be totally disconnected to do that. And still you have to secure your device, right? Kind of the rule of thumb when we start talking about data security online, mainly the best way to describe it is everything you put in place is a hurdle. Okay. You know, you might have someone that's really good jumping all those hurdles, right? But hopefully it takes them long enough that one of them will get them or they'll be detected before they get through. You know, there's definitely, that's one thing I try to tell people, there is no such thing as 100% data security. Just if you got something online, you got to understand there's a possibility of it being compromised. So be careful what you put online, okay? Or stored or whatever, okay? Chapter 20, they start talking about the web, okay? What is the web? So this is where I have terminology difference with most people.
Internet of Things.
Pardon?
Internet of Things.
Okay, what's the internet? Huh? The web. That's that. Oh, yeah.
Network of computers.
How about a network of networks? Because when we start talking about the internet, to me, and if you really get down to the basics of it, the internet is a network of connected networks. It's the cabling. When we start referring to the web or the World Wide Web, we're talking about the software layer that runs across that mesh network. Does that make sense? How long have we had the internet?
Wow.
A while. D, right? We've had it for a long time. I think it was in late seventies, wasn't it? Early eighties that it was the late, I believe the late seventies, early eighties. It was actually the result of a Department of Defense grant. And what happened was you had all these different defense contractors trying to work on smart weapons. Really, that's what it was. And at that time, by the time you had a research lab and you perfected something, and then you did all the research, theoretical research on it, and then you posted all the research to a journal in your area. And by the time it was published at the end, lucky if it was published by the end of the month, because sometime there was a lag. Okay. And what they really wanted to do was they wanted, the term now we use is networking. They wanted all these different research facilities to network together and troubleshoot research, because that made it faster to perfect certain things. Okay. So that's why the network, the internet was there. It was a Department of Defense grant that set up a high-speed data network that these research facilities and contractors could share data. A lot of that research was also done through grants at colleges and universities. And colleges and universities could tap into that network. I still remember when I was at Oklahoma State, mid-80s, we had to do research, but we had to do these things called Archies and Gophers and all these different things, which were archaic styles of search engines that we were going through and doing searches on certain topics on shared devices with that thing. And it was really cumbersome to do. And so what happened was when that grant ran out, they didn't do away with the equipment. Grant money is grant money. If you buy something with a grant, you have to justify it, you have to use it, but at the end of the grant, you just don't pull all the equipment out. You leave the equipment there. And that's when it started getting a little bit commercialized, because they wanted to come up with ways of making searches and content display to share it an easier way to do it. And that's when they came up with HTML, which was the markup language or coding language to institute all these searches and everything and build pages. And from that, that's when it totally blew up and you start having all the commercial impact of the internet. You know, to this day, there are, you know, we talk about all the VPNs and everything, virtual private networks to secure your information or whatever. There's VPNs have been running on the internet for years because we're using someone else's cabling, but trying to do it in a more secure form, where I might have a branch office here and a branch office in LA, and we're using the internet's cabling to run our private network on. And nowadays, those are just getting bigger and bigger, right? Okay, so when we talk about the web, it's just a collection of it says all these documents. It's web pages, okay? We have websites. Websites have multiple web pages, correct? It's all in HTML form, boom, public accessible in most cases, and we've commercialized it. We just made using that network easier and harder at the same time. But the more stuff we make accessible on that network, the more we open ourselves up to what? Theft, hacking, all kinds of stuff, right? So we have a browser. That's how we do our web searches, right? We have all kinds of online social networks. And I mean, how do you use the internet? I can go through and do it about 3 times. E-commerce, right? How big is that? If you don't think it's big, look at Amazon, look at Walmart.com. Do I need to go on? eBay, You can go through everything. We've commercialized the internet for shopping, correct? We've done it for entertainment. Entertainment, whether it's social media, I don't know about you guys. I'm a YouTube junkie. I mean, stuff I used to do or pay someone else to do, I do it myself because there's probably a video out there on how to do something, right? Whether it's laying brick, whatever, rebuilding the bathroom, working on your car. People use it for resources. Some people use it for entertainment, correct? I don't know. I still get blown away by this term. And what is the one? Influencer.
I hate that.
They're an influencer. Wasn't that what we used to call bad influences? But people making money off influencing, right? Or people making money off vlogging. Bottom line is, there is a documentary. Of course, it's online. I'm trying to think of the name of it. But it's the big wigs, the engineers behind Facebook and Instagram and all these different people that work for these companies that said, you might be doing a vlog, you might just be going out there researching something, you just might be on Facebook looking at posts and stuff. But do you realize the millions and billions of dollars that's being made off your data? It's kind of scary.
I mean, if you're using a free service, then you're the product.
You are the product. Precisely. That was one of the quotes in there. If you don't know what they're selling, it's you. You are the product.
Especially for
Yeah.
Facebook, right?
I'll remember the name on it, but it's not just Facebook. It's Instagram, it's Snapchat, it's everything.
Yeah.
You know, and there was an old video I used to show in this class, and it was probably 20 years ago. And they were kind of futuristic with what they were predicting the future to be. They were trying to say, you know, we have 9 socioeconomic groups, you know, lower class, middle class, upper class, but 3 subdivisions in each. They were trying to say, you know, not far into the 2020s, you know, 2019, 2029, 2030, you know, up in there, that eventually all of our socioeconomic groups are going to be 2. And this was the prediction years and years ago, that the dividing line between the 2 groups is based upon your knowledge and your utilization of technology. Because there's some people that totally say, I don't want to have anything to do with it, right? And then there's the ones that say, you know, we're buying in, all in. And it's pretty graphic that they showed the people that didn't buy into it. And it showed a family walking across a landfill looking for food. The gap between the 2 lifestyles and money and just life in general was totally separated because of technology. Kind of interesting, kind of futuristic. Little side note. Yeah, but it's pretty weird. The lead singer from a group back in the old days called the Talking Head, Dave Byrne, he was the one that was narrating that. It's kind of interesting. Digital security and piracy. We talk about viruses, malware. Again, when it's online, be careful, right? If you don't want your information hacked or stolen or identity theft, don't put it out there. And there's a lot of times you can't even help that. Okay, because a lot of times your employers will have certain stuff that can be compromised. You know, what happened 1.5 years ago when COVID hit, everybody got sent home. What happened with unemployment worldwide, or basically in the US? Did you read through where all the fake unemployment claims were being filed and all that? I got hit. My wife got hit. So what that tells me is the state of Oklahoma got hit. Because somehow, somewhere, that information was compromised. Luckily, like hers, they had her name but didn't have her social security number. The one that scared me was they had my social security number, but they didn't have my legal name. So they can't put two and two together. So it's fraudulent claims. We had to fill out a lot of paperwork, more so for me than her, because they just pulled her name off a website and did it. Somehow they got mine social security number. So I'm not sure where they got it from. So I use a credit monitoring site every day to monitor and make sure nothing is opened with that. And they said all this came overseas. Every bit of it happened from overseas. So they had people in Europe filing unemployment claims in Oklahoma. Yeah, kind of weird. So be careful. A lot of times it's nothing you do, it's other people, right? Health concerns. What kind of health concerns can we have with computers? Vision, already said that one, right?
Musculoskeletal.
Pardon? But we used to call it carpal tunnel syndrome. It was specific to the wrist. Now they just refer to that as repetitive stress syndrome. Now we have certain specifications on workload. I saw a deal one time, a graphic that said, take a job your grandfather did. If that job took your grandfather 1,000 hours to do, with the technology in your parents' time, it took them 100 hours. Now in your time, how long has it taken you? 10 hours. What happens is because the technology's making the task of performing a job faster, what's that do to your workload? Increases it. And there's a lot of stress with that. There's a lot of mental health issues with that. At one point in time, do you guys realize computer programming was the second highest suicide occupation of all? Because everybody's computerizing everything. Everything had to run, but you were under a microscope to get this job done in this amount of time. But we were sitting here still trying to debug, right? Number one group that was ahead of us still had their traffic controllers in a worse state than we were. But at one point in time, we were the second highest suicide rate. Programs and apps. They talk about environmental issues. I'll jump back to that real quick. Mainly nowadays with environment, our computers are very efficient with the way they use electricity, because that's really our big thing. But metals, heavy metals, precious metals are all in what? Processors. Okay, so that, and if you got something in front of you that's only going to have a 2 to 3 year lifespan, what are we doing with all the leftover? Okay, recycling the machines needs to be a better way of doing it. Okay. Okay, back to software. What is a software? Okay, which is another name for what? An app. You guys know them all by, oh, I'm gonna download this app, or I need to go get this app. You know, our age, we're gonna go find this software package, right? We got to go buy this. Bottom line is they're all programs, right? We just name them different for what area we're dealing with. Okay, the computer industry's kind of tried to go full circle now, because even if you're on a Windows machine or an Apple machine or whatever, you actually now have what? Your own app stores for even your PCs. So they're trying to circle the wagons and get back to the term of app, just an abbreviation for an application. Application is the same thing as a software package, which is a group of programs. So it's all the same thing, right? Okay. All computers have to have a certain type of software on them or they won't run. That's called what?
operating.
An operating system. How many people have gone out, tomorrow's Apple's supposed to release their new iPhones and watch and all this fun stuff, right? But they're also releasing what? iOS 15, which is
Iteration of our.
it's an operating system for their iPhones. You already downloaded it? Did you get it?
I've had the data.
Yeah, the beta is fine. It's not gonna be the full though. It's gonna be close, yeah. They released the beta so you can test it for them. Lot better to throw it out to a small group. I normally wait on the full one because there's enough errors in that one.
Well, I heard that in 15, they're supposed to be implementing a AI to
Mhm.
read your pictures and stuff. in the
Yeah,
reports.
it's called info hash, sorting, so it's pretty weird.
Haven't read on all of it yet. I normally let it come out, let the rush end a bit, get a few upgrades to it, work out the bugs that everybody else has, then I learn about it and update. But just the same thing. I mean, if you're on the Android, you got your operating systems, right? If you're on the Mac, you got your Macintosh operating system. If you're on PCs, you're dealing a lot of times with what? Windows? Who has Windows 11 yet? Is it out? Is it next year? They keep releasing all the different things that's gonna be in it. I think there's,
They always mess stuff up, like compatibility wise, they always messing stuff up.
it's called all of them in the computer industry. If you truly knew the history of the processors, you'd never own a computer that had Intel. Intel sold their junk all the time. It was stuff that didn't spec out right from the manufacturing. If you went out and you bought this processor and paid the high end price, the bottom end one was where they disabled a little bit because it just didn't spec right. So Intel's done it for years. They're all in it to make money. They're the Walmarts of the computer industry. All right. Operating systems are very important. Installing programs, developing programs. That's the one you guys want to do, right? Communications and networks. We have wireless and wired communications. What are my two major types of wireless communications? Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. There is a third, but you don't ever really see it anymore in computerized use, and that's infrared. Okay. Some of the early wireless networks before Bluetooth and before the radio frequency, which was Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi's radio frequency, it was actually point-to-point infrared. And the only thing you guys probably have an example of that's infrared is your remote. Okay. The neat thing about, and there's goods and bads with them. We'll talk about those later on. But a network is just a way to connect pieces of equipment to be more efficient, both time and money. Okay. If you have 30 computers, do you need 30 printers? If they're all on a network, how many printers do you need? One, pardon? 31. Yeah, this is the way printers work, right? If you never have a problem with anything, just add a new printer or copier. Okay, but how many people have a home network? What do you do? Huh? Anyone that has an internet, you might not think you have an internet, but if you have Wi-Fi in your house, guess what? You got a home network, right? It's just set up there. Business networks are good, talking about staying in sync. Education, I mean, everybody knows that now with digital parts and schools, and everybody went from Google Docs and Google Classrooms to Canvas. It's just a more robust system of things you need to do in tracking stuff. Government, where do we find computers in government? Unfortunately, cop cars, right? Go buy a gun, try to do a background check. There's some pretty important legislation getting ready to happen right now dealing with financial information. Are you aware of that? What are you hearing on that?
They're about to have to start releasing more
Transaction processing information to the IRS. So in other words, if you have a bank account all your transactions from the bank account. IRS can go in and request account balances right now, but they can't go in and look at individual line items, you know. They're proposing legislation where the IRS can actually tap into the banks for individual transactions and spending summaries.
That's,
I think that's only for over, reaches over $600 transaction.
I have quite a few transactions over $600. Still don't lump me in with the cartel. You know, right now, we have all the dispensaries, right? You guys realize still, because it's federally controlled with the banking system, it is illegal to do anything with a bank with money either generated from it or spent on it.
That's cash.
It's a cash-based business, which the government has no control over. That's why there's so much corruption in it.
I know where it's.
You do?
Illinois County is turning into a country.
Yeah, yeah. I read a report the other day, I heard it secondhand, that the marijuana growth in Oklahoma, volume wise, is enough for the entire country's dispensaries. And it's illegal to sell outside the state. Think about that one. They're using our laws because they're more lenient to grow here, and they're still shipping it out of state illegally. It's big time. So anyway, they're trying to say it's going hand in hand with that, but if, like with you, if you get paid from that dispensary, legally, you can't even deposit the money you make from mowing into your bank account.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funky.
Yeah,
They're
mine's all cash.
Still be considered.
still
Like,
source of income.
Oh, yeah.
would that still be considered like generated by marijuana if you're mowing the lawn and you get paid by those people?
If it's owned by that corporation, yes.
It seems like that's so,
Yep. And they should be able to get it from your tax records,
But it's cash.
but it's cash. You just don't report
I
it.
don't, I don't.
But you see what I'm getting at? I see the side of the IRS trying to be able to monitor it. I think they're trying to roll out a system nationwide to legalize marijuana so they can get their hands on the whole industry, not just for taxes, but to clean it up. But yet, there's a fine line. How much do you give them access to? Why do you need to treat them any different than you treat the tire shop? You know, so there's proponents on both sides, right? I'm not getting into it. Entertainment, we all know how we use entertainment on the internet. Healthcare is getting very, very robust with their utilization of IT and computerization. Used to be able to take x-rays and then go get a copy of the x-ray and take it in and manually look at it, right? Your x-ray is now what? It's digital. Your doctor pulls up the iPad. If they look at it, they say, well, I don't see a fracture here. Well, if it's a digital image, all they got to do is what? If it's high enough resolution, what do? Blow that puppy up and find the fracture. You know, it's made a lot of things a lot better. But, you know, you got to be careful because all of the equipment has to be 100% bug proof. Because if it's not, you're only as good as the software is, right? You're going to have hardware failures and you're going to have software issues. Travel, who can drive, who knows how to navigate off a map other than GPS? I tell my daughters, well, if you're going here, you got to take this turn on this street. And I'll just put it in my phone.
You know, a really interesting thing about that is now I've noticed that what Apple Maps and Google Maps does is that they actually control the flow of traffic.
Because they reroute.
They reroute people. We noticed this in Atlanta when we were driving in the line, it could split all of that stuff. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, we used to play a game when we were kids. I'm recording, I can't tell you that. But now we do it with a quarter whenever Siri tells you to turn off to save 10 minutes or something. Okay. just wait till they start using that data when the traffic starts flowing up on which advertiser gets routed by their business.
You can't prove that that's not already happening. though.
Well, I can tell you this right now, before Hurricane, Walmart has retail centers and they have their stores and they use what they call just-in-time management style, right? They buy, their practice is whenever the last X amount of whatever's on the shelf, they get a shipment in, just in time. That's the whole process from it. Well, when they forecast a hurricane, what do you know people are gonna need? There's all kinds of wood and lumber and this and that, but gas cans. Because people are gonna be running generators. They're gonna need extra gas for their cars because if power's down, they're not gonna be able to get gas for their cars or their boats or their generators, right? So every time there's a hurricane, a big one, you see a huge sell on gas cans. Walmart takes it back so far that at that time we had Blitz here, right? Blitz manufactures gas cans. Well, they do e-commerce. So Walmart could go on as soon as that thing was heading towards New Orleans. Walmart bought every gas can that Blitz had in inventory. Like 5 days before it ever hit. Even so much that they knew they would sell so many in inventory just to that area that they pre-ordered the next 3 months worth of everything that Blitz could manufacture. They locked up the industry on gas cans for like 4 months.
And yet they went out
Blitz
there.
the only manufacturer.
And then they went down there and sold every one of them. It's business. But they used the technology to do it, right? All righty, that's pretty much it for the chapter, okay? There is a study guide at the end. I would look over that. I would pay attention to the questions that you are answering on your review questions. Go back and look at the terms, look at the study guide, because we will have, I'd even look at your true, false matching, stuff like that. You will have a test when we come in here on Monday. We might meet in class, but then we're going to run down to the lab and take an online test, okay? If you have your own computer, that's fine. The only difference is if you have your own computer, you need to pull in lockdown browser, because I think I have lockdown browser on this exam. So just use our machines if you want. Doesn't take that long. If we need to rotate a machine when one's done and one's not, we'll do that. Okay? Questions? All right, see you.